Welcome to the Milk Making Minutes. Many times, parents worry about whether or not their milk is enough for their baby when feeding from their own body, because they can't see the quantity of milk being ingested. When baby starts crying, acting fussy or agitated while breastfeeding, many parents automatically assume that baby is still hungry, and this can lead parents to feeling like they don't have enough milk. Or if baby is gaining well, or is even well above average on the growth chart, they may begin down a path of eliminating foods from their own diets, thinking their baby has allergies or food intolerances. But what if there was an easier solution? Today, we are going to be exploring oversupply and how it is commonly overlooked as a contributing factor to baby fussiness and even breastfeeding refusal, and how parents can sometimes go down more difficult paths like eliminating foods from their diets when they could be instead focusing on decreasing their own supply and making baby more comfortable. So let's get into it. When I began breastfeeding, I was blindsided by how difficult it was. I may have thought I was prepared, but having known only a handful of people who had ever breastfed and only seeing it up close from a couple of them, I had a huge learning curve. Since then, I've become a doula, a lactation consultant, and a childbirth educator. I'm your host, Lo Nigrosh, and I welcome you to the Milk Making Minutes, where we explore breastfeeding experiences through the lens of systemic barriers, so that you know your breastfeeding struggles are not your fault and your triumphs really are the miracles you feel they are. So one thing that might be happening if your baby is fussy at the breast but still gaining well, and if you're seeing some signs in diaper output that indicate that something might be going on with baby, is that you might be experiencing oversupply. So what are some signs that you can look for to know that you're having oversupply? Well, some signs in your own body that you might be having oversupply, which is also called overabundant milk production, hyperlactation, hyperactive milk ejection reflex, and hypergalactia, are that your milk flow is usually very fast, especially during milk ejection. You have high volume feeds, so lots and lots of milk. Some people have profuse milk leakage. You often have painful nipples, and this is from the baby clamping down to control the flow. You often have painful mammary glands. Many overproducing parents experience milk ejections as painful or knife-like, and you often feel full again shortly after nursing. And many parents who experience oversupply often have recurring plugged ducts or recurring mastitis. Now, it does not mean that you would have to experience all of these symptoms to be someone who has oversupply. But if you're experiencing, more than half of these symptoms, and your baby is also experiencing some of the symptoms that I'm about to describe, you might be thinking to yourself, ooh, maybe I am someone who has oversupply. So what might you be seeing in your baby to signal that you might be someone who is an overproducer or has overabundant milk production? Signs in the baby are that they are pulling back from the breast, clamping down, or using biting or chewing mouth movements during nursing, and this is to try to slow the flow of milk. Many may cough or sputter during the milk ejection when the milk releases. This is because so much milk is coming in that they're having a hard time managing the milk. The baby might have a general unwillingness to nurse while falling asleep because the milk is flowing in so quickly that they cannot manage that flow of milk and have that nice sleepy time that you're hoping for. They might come on and off of the breast during a nursing session, and you might also see that they just keep the nipple loose in their mouth while the milk just flows into their mouth. They don't have to do much to get the milk in. That's a sign that you have really overabundant milk supply that just kind of flows into their mouth like a hose. These babies often have very fast weight gain. They often exceed their weight by double or triple or more the average weight gain. They often have fussiness in between feeds, and you might see explosive green, frothy, or watery stools, which can then sometimes lead families down the path of believing that they have allergies or intolerances that they need to begin elimination diets for. They might have continuous feeding cues even after taking ample milk. So because of these continuous feeding cues, families may believe that they have too little milk since their babies are constantly hungry. And because the babies might feed for a short amount of time, the families think, oh, my baby's not feeding very much, and they're constantly appearing hungry, I must not be making enough milk. And then these families might start to try to increase their milk supply by pumping in between feeds, expressing more milk, hand expressing, going on Facebook groups for low milk supply, taking galactagogues to try to increase supply. And then this exacerbates the problem because the overabundance of milk just gets higher and higher, and then the baby becomes fussier and fussier, and then they might go down this allergy path, and the problem doesn't get better. One of the reasons why the baby might be so fussy and might never seem so satiated is because when there is so much milk in the mammary glands, the baby receives high sugar milk because the milk that comes in the beginning is higher in sugar, and the milk that comes at the end of the feed is higher in lipase or fat. And that is because the fat globules stick to the milk ducts and then they kind of get pulled out at the end of the feed. And so that's why you might hear those terms foremilk and hindmilk. And it's really not usually a big deal. We really don't normally have to concern ourselves with foremilk or hindmilk very much. But in this instance, if your milk ducts are full and you have so much milk and the baby is receiving only that high sugar milk and they're never getting to the high fat milk because you have so much milk, then what happens is that fat sticks to the milk ducts. It's not coming out in the feed, and fat is needed to release a peptide called cholecystoconin. And cholecystoconin, or CCK, aids in digestion and in regulation of intake. It leaves the baby feeling satisfied and relaxed after a feeding. And so if they're never getting that high lipase milk that comes at the end of the feed, then they might never feel satisfied. And so that's one of the ways that oversupply can contribute to a fussy, colicky, upset baby who always seems hungry.
Do you love to read about pregnancy, childbirth, and breastfeeding? Are you looking for books to help you become a more confident parent? Or perhaps books to help you understand what went wrong with your breastfeeding journey or to do better next time with breastfeeding? Or do your kids have questions about breastfeeding or pregnancy, but you don't really know how to answer them? Would you prefer to have a curated list on these topics? Go to the link in the show notes to my new affiliated bookshop. Every purchase you make benefits the Milk Making Minutes. But better than that, these books are vetted. I've read them all, and I feel very confident recommending them to you. I'll be adding to them continuously, so go to that link when you want to purchase a book. It will help the show, and you can feel confident it will be a purchase you will enjoy.
So how can you help this baby? Well, in regards to a baby who's popping off and on the breast or who's chomping down to try to control the flow, one of the things that you can do is nurse in side lying position or nurse in a way where the baby's head is above the breast so that they can use gravity to kind of control the milk flow a little bit better to try to get those fat globules to release from the milk ducts, you can do what we call the milkshake, which is kind of shake the breasts before a feed to break up the fat globules and get them into the milk. You can nurse when the baby is drowsy or sleepy already so that they're a little more calm when they're coming to the breast. You can try frequent burp breaks so the baby can kind of pace themselves and be able to slow down in the feed. If they're just constantly fussy and they're maybe getting a little gas from all the gasping of trying to control that milk flow. As far as expressing milk for your own comfort, if you need to express milk, either hand express or with a pump, do so just to comfort. So instead of expressing until you're quote unquote empty, only do so until you're not feeling engorged anymore. And this will over time help you to downregulate a little bit so you don't have so much milk. And so it's not as problematic as it is right now because your body will get the signal to not make as much milk as what it's making right now. In extreme cases, you could try block feeding, which means feeding on one side at a time until that side feels empty. So you might return to the same side for multiple feedings instead of switching sides at every feeding. And so that will allow the baby to get to that high lipase milk. It will allow you to kind of empty one side, and it will over time downregulate your milk supply as the other side is not being emptied every time or is not being stimulated. So if you do decide to block feed, then you can express the other side only to comfort, as I've already mentioned. We don't really recommend downregulating your milk supply in the first 12 weeks because often we don't really know what your body's going to be making for your baby within that first 10 to 12 weeks. And so if you try to start down regulating before that, it might be that you don't have enough milk for your baby. But if you do decide to block feed, this can slow down production and make feeding more manageable and prevent recurring plugged ducts or recurring mastitis if that is a problem that you've been having. And so if you're hearing this and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is what has been happening. My baby has been having those frothy green poops. My baby's been very fussy at the breast. It might be that you are an overabundant milk maker. If you know somebody who could benefit from hearing this episode, please share it with them. And if you would like to talk about the systemic barriers which make breastfeeding so difficult, including the reasons why so many people feel the need to increase their milk supply, to get an overabundant supply, please join me over at the Milk Making Minutes community group where we talk about such things.